Hello, my name is Carrie Taylor. I'm the Principal Ergonomist at Tailored Ergonomics, a consulting and training company based in southwestern Ontario, Canada. I have over 30 years of full-time experience in ergonomics and training. Today I'm going to talk about microlearning, which is a term you may not have heard of before. In fact, the word was new to me until a couple of years ago. Microlearning refers to a way of delivering training in short, bite-sized pieces that are easier to fit into your schedule and easier for people to take in, absorb, and use. In particular, I'll be talking about ergonomics or strain sprain injury prevention microlearning because that is my area of expertise. I hope you'll find my webinar interesting and useful. Let's get started. There are a lot of interesting stats on this slide. These numbers represent injury stats in the province of Ontario, Canada during 2023 and 2024. I don't think they're unique to our geography, but they are accessible to me and relatable for local clients. Among the events that lead to injury, overexertion is the most common. Of all the types of injuries that occur, strains and sprains are the most common, accounting for 35% of all workplace injuries. By body part, the most commonly injured is still the lower back. And if you dig deeper into the injury statistics, you'll learn that in almost every sector, strains and sprains are the leading cause of injury. I would also say it's true that in almost every workplace, employers are providing training or safety talks to encourage safe work practices to prevent these injuries. A question for you. Is the effort spent on developing and delivering strain sprain injury prevention proportionate to the number of injuries in your workplace? If 35% of your injuries are strains and sprains, do you focus on ergonomics during 35% of your safety talks? Maybe you've provided plenty of strain sprain injury prevention and the injuries are still occurring. Why would that be? Perhaps the training isn't getting at the root cause of the injuries. If a job requires highly repetitive bending, you can't solve the problem with training. Repetitive bending, even with great technique, is still going to put workers at risk. Let's be clear, fixing the job is the best way to prevent strain sprain injuries, but there are jobs that can't be fixed yet. In some jobs, the worker's technique can make a big difference in how hard the job is. It's particularly frustrating to ergonomists, engineers, and managers when we provide ergonomic tools and equipment and that don't get used. And it's important to dig and find out why. Sometimes people just need training so they can properly use a good ergonomics intervention. If you've provided training and you haven't seen results, you should consider how effective the training was. And we'll talk more about how to do that later. After an injury, a supervisor and a worker typically meet to identify the corrective actions. Don't think that you're alone in being a bit embarrassed that most strain sprain injuries are resolved with the phrase, re-instruct the worker. Incident forms are filled out under some time pressure, even if the supervisor knows that the solution is maybe you need a lift table or a hoist or an adjustable bench. You can't write that on the form because it will create another pile of work. The worker is embarrassed to be injured and willingly takes the blame. I should have known better. I didn't bend my knees. I should have gotten help. And the true reasons for the injury never come to light. If this happened once, it would be understandable, but in most workplaces, the same injuries and the same re-instruction happen over and over and over. Once the supervisor and a worker agree that re-instruction will resolve the issue, the supervisor is obligated to provide some advice. Are supervisors really equipped to re-instruct the workers? Some may be. Those that did the job before being promoted to supervision may have learned the easiest way to do the job. But by and large, supervisors are not experts at every job in their department, and they would be hard-pressed to identify the specific work practices that could prevent strain sprain injuries. Some employers are pretty proactive about providing ergonomics training to all workers. They might provide an online course where participants sit through a slideshow that talks about strain sprain injury hazards. They might even offer in-person training that could be a bit more specific. Maybe you offer some examples of these hazards in your workplace and show some interventions and work practices that might help. A lot of basic ergo training focuses on identifying the hazards, force, posture, and repetition. This is an important first step. Some training promotes very general techniques that don't really apply to all jobs. Very few ergonomics training programs encourage employees to try specific techniques that will help them in their jobs. Did employees sleep through the last ergonomics training you provided? Traditional ergonomics training can be very dry, presented as a PowerPoint lecture. Sometimes it's delivered virtually instead of in person, which is even less engaging. Workers can zone out because they don't see a connection between the training and their specific roles. They don't retain anything. This type of training ticks a box on the safety program checklist, but it doesn't really change behavior or provide useful work strategies. Ergonomics shouldn't be boring. It should be the most practical training in any workplace. It helps people to do their tasks in ways that won't hurt their bodies. Because it is about doing stuff, participants should be doing stuff in the training, not just listening and watching, but actually trying things out. If your ergonomics training is boring, this webinar is for you. We've been providing ergonomics training in 1 or 2 hour sessions for small or large groups of people for years, and there's still a demand for that. Some of our clients shut down the entire facility for a few hours so that everyone can be trained, and that's costly. Many clients have asked us for shorter sessions. You're probably already providing training in 5-minute modules as safety talks or tailgate talks, or maybe you have pre-shift or morning meetings. These time slots offer a perfect opportunity to deliver a powerful, short, practical ergonomics training session. Maybe you don't have an ergonomist on site. Bringing one in for 5 minutes at a time isn't very practical. We're sometimes asked to work 12-hour shifts so we can deliver training to nights, days, and afternoons, and this is expensive for our clients. Is there a way for you to deliver these sessions in-house? Absolutely. Your current safety talks are probably delivered by supervisors, health and safety committee reps, or your safety staff, but ergonomics can feel like a bit out of their realm. To deliver effective sessions, you'd need to provide really good resources, a script, examples, activities. You can look for resources on the internet. I did to see what was out there. Most ergonomics training is either very basic, force, posture, repetition, or overly complicated. Here's the moment arm created when you reach out with a load. It's either boring or overly complex, and none of it is specific to the type of work performed in your workplace. Finally, for those of you who have delivered ergonomics training, did you get the results you hoped for? When you invest the time and money involved in providing training for all of your workers, you have a right to expect some good outcomes. If you're struggling to address strain sprains in your workplace, you likely need to improve your ergonomics training. Musculoskeletal disorders are still the biggest cause of injuries, and they aren't being addressed effectively. Which jobs are associated with these injuries? Can you reduce the physical demands? Training is not an appropriate substitute for engineering controls. Is your ergonomics training providing practical tools, tips, techniques, and strategies that employees can use to reduce their risk? In almost every workplace, strains and sprains are the leading cause of injuries, and they aren't being addressed effectively. We believe that microlearning that focuses on practical strategies for specific tasks is part of the solution. Okay, how we got here. So back in the 90s, when I studied adult learning principles, I realized that training needs to be hands-on in order to be effective, and that changed my perspective on training forever. Prior to these courses, I had dreaded every 120 slide training session, but training became fun, charged with experiences and gains and lots of aha moments from the participants. However, when it comes to worker ergo training, it's hard to get employers to commit to scheduling sessions that require time away from production. And it's faster for both the facilitator and the participant if we just jam a bunch of slides together and present information to people about what we hope they will do in the workplace. But if you want to teach someone to do something, telling them how is not enough. I can tell you how to make a loaf of bread or change the prop on a boat, but the first time you try to do it, you're going to struggle. People need to try the new skill in a safe environment, and they need feedback to know if they're doing it right. We applied these principles to our full day courses and eventually to our employee training, those 1 and 2 hour courses for various workers, and the feedback has always been really good, but we still had trouble selling it. So the challenges: some clients want annual training. So we couldn't create new training every year. Did you know that it takes over 200 hours to develop just 1 hour of new practical training? I wouldn't have believed it either if I hadn't tracked our time. Many workplaces involve very specific tasks with strain sprain hazards. Our generic training, even if specific to manual handling or driving or outdoor work, just didn't address their specific concerns. Employers didn't want all of their workers away from their jobs for an hour. Social media has also reduced our attention spans, and classroom training no longer captures and holds our attention. We need smaller chunks more often. So we surveyed our clients and learned that most companies do deliver regular safety talks. Why not use some of these 5-minute blocks for ergonomics training? We started looking at sectors with unique tasks. A paramedic who is lifting patients does not need to learn how to lift a box. A worker who uses a screw gun at a standing workstation all day and the office worker sitting at the computer do not need to be advised when to bend the knees when lifting. So we should focus our precious training time to encourage work practices that benefit the actual work being done. We wanted to offer training that would help paramedics, healthcare providers, outdoor workers, warehouse workers, and other sectors that we have not even thought of yet. We needed a process to create this training, so we created one, and we're sharing it with you today. All right, let's talk about microlearning. Microlearning is a teaching approach that focuses on delivering content in small, easily digestible chunks. Instead of long traditional sessions, microlearning breaks information into brief, targeted chunks that can be consumed quickly, often in just a few minutes. So how do you create effective microlearning? So let's use the term ergonomics to represent strain sprain injury prevention or musculoskeletal disorder injury prevention. I won't use all of those terms interchangeably. The rest of the webinar is going to talk about what we've learned about building powerful, short, practical safety talks that address strain sprain injury hazards. I'll cover the three most important steps. The first is to find and prove relevant ergonomic work strategies. The second is to develop hands-on training using consistent coaching plans based on adult learning principles. And the third is to deliver the training in small doses in a way that fits with your organization. And a bonus tip, prove that your training works while you're doing all of this. All right, let's dive into those in a little bit more detail. First step, identify and prove ergonomic work strategies. Finding the strategy sounds easy, but it's not. When asked about ergonomic work strategies, workers will tell you what they think you want to hear. I bend my knees, I keep my wrists straight. But the truly useful strategies are more often things that workers think of as shortcuts or tricks or cheats. We use the terms common practice and ergonomic work strategy. So we give examples to show people what we mean by these and we get them thinking. Typically, we spend about a half day with a small group of workers focusing on one specific task, such as lifting linen bags or using a pole saw. We identify and document the common practices and the ergo work strategies, gathering information from workers in the field, including measurements and photographs. Our ergonomists have some tricks up our sleeves when it comes to drawing these strategies out of workers. When we've gathered all of their thoughts and ideas and photos, we do biomechanical analyses to compare the common practice with the proposed ergonomic work strategy so that we're confident the strategy makes the job easier. This slide shows two ways of lifting a bag of laundry from a bin. We've shown that leaning on the bin, holding the bin with one hand, and using a gopher's lift makes lifting the laundry bags quite a lot easier. The common practice used 67% of maximum back strength, whereas the ergo work strategy only used 40%. So you can quantitatively see the difference between the common practice and the ergo work strategy. It's interesting to note that at the analysis stage, we toss out some of the proposed ergo work strategies. The science just doesn't back them. Sometimes these are strategies that management wants people to use for other reasons. If you don't have an ergonomist, no problem. You can still use ergo work strategies. You won't be able to do the biomechanical analysis, but there are other ways. So first off, harvest the experience from the workers on the job. Learn about their ergonomic work strategies. Then test those strategies, those solutions with other workers to confirm that they work for everyone. Lay them out step by step so you're very clear on what the person needs to do to succeed with that strategy. We can't emphasize this enough. Effective training must be based on effective work strategies. For example, bending the knees makes lifting from a deep freeze harder, not easier. Identify the strategies that help and lay them out step by step so that anyone could follow them. The training won't be helpful unless it's relevant. A couple of important notes here. Focus on finding strategies for the specific tasks that are performed in the workplace, especially those that have been associated with injuries. Hazard specific should mean task specific. Lifting is not a specific hazard. Lifting a fridge into the back of a pickup truck requires a special set of skills. Lifting a leg so a nurse can apply a bandage requires a very different but special set of skills. Okay, so then the second step is to develop that hands-on practical training. Let's talk about coaching plans. So we need to give participants an opportunity to practice during the training so that they can understand the value of that new technique and think about where it can be applied in their jobs. There's an old adage that says, what I hear, I forget, what I see, I remember, and what I do, I understand. So we want to let participants do stuff during the training. So the coaching plans ensure consistent messaging for all participants. If you sent out an email asking 10 ergonomists to provide training on how to adjust seat pan height for office workers, you'll get 10 different lessons. But imagine if you asked 10 different supervisors to do it. So the coaching plans make sure that every worker in your workplace gets the same information, the same advice. The coaching plans also reduce stress for the facilitator. No one wants to be testing out a lesson for the very first time with a new audience. The coaching plan should be piloted so the facilitator knows that if they follow the script, they'll get good results. The coaching plan also ensures that adult learning principles are followed. Impromptu training is almost impossible to provide well. Identifying appropriate activities is hard and it takes time and creativity, but once you've got it down, it does get easier. A coaching plan provides the hear, see, and do material and ensures that participants get practice and feedback and connect the lesson with their workplace. Really important. Ultimately, the adult learning cycle ensures effective learning and fosters behavior change that you're looking for in the workplace. Our coaching plans are all based on a template. The plan ensures 5 things. It ensures the facilitator introduces the topic so participants hear about the strategy. The plan uses plain language and is very clear about where this strategy applies and where it might not. The plan tells the facilitator how to show participants what to do so they see the strategy, hear, and see. The plan then sets up an activity that allows participants to try the technique and truly experience its effects. So they do the strategy. They hear, they see, and they do. And then they understand. It provides very, very clear instructions and photographs to help the facilitator set up the activities. And fourth, the plan provides debriefing questions and answers and makes sure that all participants can make that connection between what they learn in that training session and their real workplace. And that's really critical to the process of learning. You can play a game in this session to show how important foot placement is during training, and that's what this photograph is showing. But if you don't make a connection with work, it's all just a game and fun. Finally, the plan suggests ways to reinforce the technique in the workplace. So again, you're trying to take it beyond the 5-minute learning session. So let's consider how we might teach people to use a staggered base of support, which is a technique that's really useful for pushing or pulling, for example, on a wrench. We call this strategy all about that base. In the introduction, you would describe a wrenching task and how much strength it takes, or how, if the fitting suddenly releases, the worker can fall. In the demo, the facilitator might stand with the feet close together and wave the arms around. Participants will see that the facilitator can't reach very far before they fall over if their feet are close together. But if you stagger your stance, the circle becomes bigger. You can reach much further because you have more stability. The activity, which is shown on the image on this slide, is one where a smaller worker can overcome a larger worker by using the ergonomic work strategy. If you're in a room with another person, I hope you'll try this as we go. First, participants stand facing each other with both people with the feet close together and hands touching. So you're standing face to face with your hands touching each other and your feet close to each other. If both workers push, the smaller worker will lose balance first. It's just physics. However, If you repeat that activity with the larger worker keeping their feet close together, like we show on this slide, and the smaller worker getting an ergonomic advantage by using a staggered stance with the feet shoulder width apart and one slightly forward from the other, the smaller worker should be able to push the larger worker off balance first. So this is we call these rhino and beetle activities, where we give the underdog, the smaller person, an ergonomic advantage, and it shows that offers them strength. During the debriefing session, you would have ensure that workers make the connection between the activity that they just performed and the workplace. Where does this apply? What are the barriers to using this strategy? And finally, we like to find innovative ways to reinforce a technique in the workplace. Maybe you invite everyone back to talk about it next week, or you hold a contest to see who can find the most applications, or you encourage them to shout out all about that base when they see each other. So, deliver that training in small doses. Deliver relevant, practical ergonomics training in short chunks of time. Social media has reduced our attention spans, and classroom training no longer captures and holds our attention. We need smaller chunks more often. It also needs to fit with your organization. So how does microlearning fit into your organization? Maybe you can use them during safety talks or pre-shift meetings. Some clients prefer to do their training on an annual basis. They've already got it set up. So you could string a series of those together during an annual meeting. Maybe you could do it during natural production downtime. Maybe you need to think about who's going to deliver the training. Is it going to be supervisors, health and safety committee reps, or safety department staff? Okay, bonus tip. It's really important, particularly with financial pressures in your organization, to prove that your training works. So we've learned that managers always want proof of how effective their initiatives were, and typical training success is measured by the number of bums in seats. Did everyone participate? Some companies use a quiz to measure how much participants learned, and that's good, but rarely is training evaluated based on the impact it has on the organization. We believe that effective ergonomics training will provide workers with confidence that they can use ergonomic work strategies. It will result in better productivity because people won't need short rest breaks. There won't be production bottlenecks. There won't be missed targets because people are using better techniques and not getting hurt, not feeling sore. It will result in better quality, fewer errors, less scrap, less corrections to be made, and better employee engagement. And that is seen in absenteeism and turnover. It's possible to measure baseline and follow-up statistics for these metrics using surveys of employees and supervisors. Does effective ergonomics training create improvements in these three metrics? Maybe not, but we should explore that possibility. Imagine a manager's response to a report showing even a small improvement in productivity. And if we identify that the training is not effective, we can explore why. Did we choose relevant strategies? Did the training get rolled out effectively? Not only does microlearning approach improve employee morale and get the workers up and moving around, it allows them to figure out how to use a relevant practical strategy and gives them an experience to remember that tip. Okay, so let's recap. Our top 3+1 tips for creating effective microlearning are: learn from the experts on the job. Identify and document ergonomic work strategies for specific tasks. Gather information from workers in the field and ask about their tips and tricks. As a plug for ergonomists, we have some tricks up our sleeves when it comes to drawing these tips out of workers. We can also do those biomechanical analyses to compare and confirm the common and ergonomic work strategies. But you can identify them if you work closely with experienced workers and confirm that the suggested strategies work for all sizes of workers in all scenarios. The more workers that can actually apply that tip during their regular work tasks, the more value the training will have for your organization. And again, we can't emphasize it enough. Effective training needs to be based on effective work strategies. So identify the strategies that help, lay them out step by step so anyone can follow them. Create good coaching plans. So good coaching plan is based on adult learning principles. Presentation, facilitator introduces the task, describes why it's important, why it's an important problem, and how the ergonomic work strategy helps. Application, the participants have an opportunity to try the common and ErgoWorks strategy and rate the difference somehow objectively so they can clearly see the benefit of the strategy that's being taught. Creating these is a lot of fun, but they can feel a lot like games, but it's really important to pilot them and to write down very clear, concise instructions for the facilitator to follow. And third, feedback. Make sure participants discuss the strategy, understand whether they were doing it correctly, understand where it applies in their workplace, and the facilitator should follow up with the participants later to confirm that that strategy has actually been helpful. If you have one person roll the training out for the entire organization, the message will probably be delivered consistently. It's more common, however, for a layperson to deliver the training. You might want your supervisors to do it, or your health and safety committee reps, or your ergo team. In this case, it's critical to provide that solid coaching plan to ensure consistency, provide instructions for the hands-on activity, and give the facilitator confidence in the material. And then step 3, or the third tip, deliver that training in short chunks, often rather than in one big dump. A teacher once told me the mind can only absorb what the bum can endure. These days, sitting isn't really the limiting factor. Our brains are trained to change gears often. Providing a single ErgoWorks strategy and then giving participants time to absorb, apply, and consider it in the context of their daily routine should be more effective than throwing 10 tips at them over the course of an hour. And bonus, plan to measure the effectiveness of your training. We suggest doing this in 3 ways. Ask participants at every session how likely they are to use the strategy that they just learned. You can do that as part of your attendance. Measure before you start the training series and after how employees are performing. Use a survey to gather their end-of-day comfort scores, their perceived productivity, quality, and job satisfaction. Of course, some of those metrics are easier for us to collect as an outside party because we can anonymize the data. In your survey, use 10-point scales so you have numbers to work with. You'll be able to compare pre- and post-training scores statistically, and these stats may well prove to be a very powerful way in justifying the expense of your training. And third, ask supervisors how they think employees are doing. You can also use surveys to gauge supervisor perception of productivity, quality, and engagement. Asking these questions and comparing your before and after data will help you to learn about what you've done and refine the program for next time. If you're part of a company that wants to bring new life to your ergonomics training, please reach out to me by email. We'd love to help you develop new microlearning. And there's a good chance that we have some relevant microlearning available for purchase. Thank you for watching my webinar.